Perfect. As usual.
Decades come and decades past. Resurrect the classic cast, slews of clues and callbacks. My name is Noah Marks here at Screen Rant. Welcome back.
Hey, Winnie, what do you call yourselves?
The original.
Hocus Pocus 2 picks up where the first left off, leaving us breathless and liable for looking through the veil of contemporary cinema and finding those hints and nods to the film that came before. So get on your mops and vacuums and ride with us through every original movie Easter egg we could conjure up.
Reveal the incantation.
What better way to start this video than to begin with the first scene of the movie itself, which is a clear callback to the original Hocus Pocus. The camera pans down and we see a raven, who is later revealed to be Mother Witch, fly through the forest surrounding 1600 Salem. This sequence finally leads us into a flashback of the early Sanderson sisters' lives. The opening of the movie is extremely similar to the opening of the original Hocus Pocus film. The Sanderson sisters have a technique to keep themselves calm and acute to their mission. We were introduced to the calming circle in the first film, and we get an origin story of sorts in this one.
Suggest we form a calming circle. I am calm!
It even acts as a nice character development moment in the movie. If you listen to the items on the first movie's list, it includes the Black Plague, rabid bats, and what must be the crunchiest pie known to man. Jump back to when they were younger and much more innocent, you get fresh mud and the screams of the Reverend. Alright, the second one sounds bad, I know, but it's a far cry from the plague that killed almost 1/3 of Europe, so, what are you gonna do? Cats are still relatively new to domestication when compared to animals like dogs or horses. 13th century Pope Gregory IX vilified cats as satanic, and nobody seemed to bat an eye. A lot of religious superstitions around cats can be traced back to this. One man's quest to vilify the animal cursed cats to be associated with eternal evil. All to say that the curse Winifred uses to turn poor Thackeray Binks into a sleek black cat in the original Hocus Pocus is a little unfair to our feline friends. In one of the opening scenes in Hocus Pocus 2, we hear the Sanderson sisters talk about cat transformation. This is a nice nod to the now nostalgic scene as well as a continuation of the unfair bias against cats. Here's a question for you. If something is bound in human skin, can you technically call it leather? Because if so, both Hocus Pocuses, or Poci, are about 3 elderly Wiccan trying to retrieve their stolen leather-bound recipe book from a group of teens who are trying to kill him. Besides that, it would be gross negligence if we didn't mention the spine-chilling call Winifred has for her beloved bewitching book. Winifred, played by Bette Midler, beckons forth her book with a long and pronounced boo, or something like that. I hope we can insert that somewhere. But either way, it is haunting and sounds like a wolf howling at the moon. And the sequel was adamant to give us heaping helpings of her heartfelt cry. Even Becca, played by Whitney Peak, gets her own more direct version of it. Sure, it wasn't as haunting as Winifred's, but give it another 300 years and I'm sure it'll become a lot more defined. Number 5, costumes. While the Sanderson sisters' costumes are all quite spectacular, we are actually going to focus on some supporting characters, because we get to see the return of Satan and his betrothed Medusa in line for those delectable candy apples. The two are dressed like Gary and Penny Marshall's characters from the first film. This is a fun way the movie reminds us of that spectacularly silly scene from the original. But wait, there's more, because if you watch closely, a modern take on Max and Danny's mother's costume is hiding amongst the crowd as well. Alright, get your dancing shoes on in Salem because the witches are back to put another spell on you. It can't be a coincidence that in both Hocus Pocus movies there is a large dance scene starting at pretty much the exact time, with the sisters singing a very popular song. One Way or Another starts at 58 minutes and 34 seconds in Hocus Pocus 2, while Spell on You in the original starts at about 57 minutes and 52 seconds, but the sisters don't hit stage until exactly 58 minutes and 36 seconds, starting from Winifred's iconic Hello Salem. But if you can't accept that as a callback, Sarah being lured to the Witch Mother by the very song she uses in the first film should be enough. Number 7. During Winifred's ride through Salem, she stops by a couple watching the original film on their television, the very scene with the false Satan and Medusa nonetheless. However, this does raise a lot of questions about the reality they're living in. You think Winifred noticed it was her mistaken master? The events through her eyes would only be days apart. Let's think about it this way. She was killed, dead for 300 years, and awoke again in 93, as if no time had passed. She spent a harrowing night alive before being dead for another 27 years, and then woke up again. Who knows, maybe there's a deleted scene where Winifred pulls her satanic sisters aside to discuss the scenes she saw, but then again, that just might be wishful thinking. Number 8, Shishka Baby. Do you remember what Mary called Danny in the first film? Well, by the title, you can probably assume it was Shishka Baby, a portmanteau of shish kebab and baby. She also refers to Becca by this title, trying to remember her name, but we're not done yet. Mary Sanderson should have no idea what a shish kebab is, let alone use it as such a sick burn. Or she did, or could. It's complicated. Let me explain. Either the English-speaking world took shish kebab from the Turkish in the 17th or 20th century. The former means that the Sanderson sisters really were ahead of their time adopting a cuisine faster than Sarah-made gelatin. The latter means that they read up on their food and etymology during their 300-year slumber. Either way, I find it impressive. Sarah Sanderson is a huge fan of the word amok. It is possible she'd repeat it into infinity if her ever short-tempered sister Winifred didn't stop her. Becoming her catchphrase of sorts, Hocus Pocus 2 delivers it to us on a silver platter much like the first did. Every time Sarah starts her amok chant, Winifred gets her under control. Amok, if you didn't know, means to behave uncontrollably. It takes zero leap in logic to see the humor in Winifred proclaiming they shall run amok and scalding her sister for doing just that. For many years, American rapper and personality Xzibit was on our screens pimping out rides and stealing our hearts. But early television aside, Hocus Pocus has a habit of doing the same exact thing for the Sanderson sisters rides. In the first film, they have to improvise after each broom is stolen by the wicked children, leaving Winifred with just another broom, Sarah on a mop, and Mary hoovering, pun intended, through the sky on a vacuum cleaner. The movie plays out, they're dead, the show goes on. Hocus Pocus 2 calls this back with a little 21st century flair. Winifred, of course, rides on a broom, Sarah's now sailing swiftly on a Swiffer wet jet, and Mary has 2 new Roombas to play with. Automated vacuums and sleek upgrades to the mops are just the thing Xzibit himself would shed a tear over. Number 11, Candy Stolen. When Gilbert is explaining his perspective of the night of 1993, we see the original sins of the sisters when footage of Emily Binks' death is shown once more. But beyond just reused footage, Gilbert's story is a very interesting one, because he says on Halloween night when he saw the witches, his candy was stolen by a bunch of boys. We know very well that 2 rude boys were more than active on Halloween night in 93. Gilbert is very much talking about Jay and Ice, the very characters who stole Max's shoes. They may be missing on screen, but it's cool to see that they're still involved. This next one is a bit of a slow burner. When brought back to life and their book is missing, the Sanderson sisters start to retrace their steps. A brief moment is given to make sure they won't be fooled by a false sunrise again. Now, a good rule of thumb, especially for a simpler family movie, is that when a trivial matter is brought up, it most likely is not trivial. Whether it is foreshadowing, world building, or characterization, this seemingly trivial matter may very well come back into play. Think about the weird focus Biff had on a fistful of dollars in Back to the Future Part 2. So it really was of little surprise that they reprised this gag for the sequel. As Mayor Thatch gets home, his headlights trick them once again. And here's a little bonus nod. Ever wonder why they always assume it's a small bus and not a car? Well, the sisters have never seen a car, at least not one that's on. Rewatching the first film reveals their only on-screen interaction with any kind of vehicle is that late bus, whose driver is a little too keen to give them children. Creepy bus drivers aside, their minibus guest was pretty good for a bunch of 383-year-old witches. Continuing our trend of pretentious explanations of foreshadowing, in Gilbert's flashback we are reminded of how the 3 sisters die and in what order. Sarah first, giving a dramatic and breathy goodbye to all around her, followed by Mary, who humorously gives us a wave and a solemn bye-bye. Finally, there's Winifred, who stands petrified and alone. It would be just another fun callback to the ending of the original if it weren't for the penultimate scene in the sequel. After Magica Maxima is cast, Sarah and Mary start to be dissolved. involved, but this time in reverse. Mary goes first, giving her signature bye-bye, even though it's a little less lonesome this time around, followed shortly by Sarah's final goodbye. And once again, petrified by her own mistake, Winifred pleads with Becca to bring her to her sisters, and she dissolves with them. She even strikes a pose not too dissimilar to the one she was in as a statue, a storybook ending to the reign of terror that was the Sanderson sisters, leaving this world as they were in it, together. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the wicked wonders of Hocus Pocus 2. Both films play amongst each other, giving and adding onto the story like all good sequels should. The fleshing out of the town of Salem in the first film allowed us to get more invested in the lives and history of our beloved three characters in this one. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to get more of us here at Screen Rant. Have a good one.